Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ben McGuinness from Danesfield School, and I'm joined by Sarah Morgan, our head teacher at Danesfield, and we're also joined by Lee Small from Ribblesdale High School. Um, we're going to go through our approaches to blended learning and how we're supporting children who are isolating at home and can't attend school at the moment for whatever reason, and how that is balanced with actually teaching the children in school as well. And we're just going to explain sort of how we're doing things in our schools and how it's working well for us, and just see if we can sort of share some ideas that you might find useful. The chat is open, so if you want to ask any questions as we're going, then put them in the chat and then we'll try to go through them as we go, or answer any questions at the end. So I'm going to pass you over first of all to Sarah.
Thanks, Ben. So I guess from a leader's point of view, the biggest challenge with blended learning is ensuring that it works for everybody. Teachers need to feel supported and not overwhelmed, and equally, children need to be able to access high quality teaching and learning. And our aim throughout this webinar is to explain how blended learning can be a positive experience for children and staff, and how it can be managed in a way that won't increase significantly teacher workload, and more importantly, the stress that it places on teachers, and make children feel as included as possible when they're not in school. So one of the first things that you need to ensure as a leader is that all staff are aware of the expectations. So from teachers to teaching assistants, office staff, they need to understand exactly how blended learning will be delivered. This ensures that all communication with parents and children is clear and it manages the expectations for everybody. It's vital that teachers and the office staff keep in close communication, because the number of children that are potentially self-isolating may change quite quickly. You need to look within your school at your own setting and identify the staff who have the capacity to deliver the high quality teaching and learning remotely. We recognise that schools don't carry spare teachers, so you need to ensure that the model that you choose works for your staffing structure. And Ben will talk in more detail about the staffing structure and the model that we use in Danesfield. We felt that streaming live lessons within our primary school setting placed additional pressure on the teachers. Therefore, we haven't live streamed, but that's basically because we felt kind of lessons which include 4-year-olds, you're never quite sure what's going to happen. While it's very important as well to provide children with education at home, it's also just as important to ensure that their pastoral and well-being needs are also being met. So during periods of self-isolation, it's very easy for children to feel disconnected from their class. So we have our pastoral support leader who makes calls with the children to see how they're getting on and provides additional support if necessary. These children also join class calls via Teams at the end of the day, which means that they can share with story time or whichever discussions the class may be having at the end of the day, and just feel part of the community within their class again. We've also set up a laptop within each classroom, which means not only can the teacher message the child who is out of school and that during that period of time, but also gives children the opportunity to have the kind of direct contact with their friends, which is really important when they will be potentially feeling more lonely because they may be the only child who is isolating at the time out of their class. So in addition to the academic and the pastoral support, we also offer additional activities such as forest school, art, sport and drumming sessions. And these are sessions that children can watch and join in when it kind of works for them within the afternoon. And the idea behind these type of activities is it enables the children to have access to more of a balanced curriculum, but it also helps to support the teacher's workload, because they're only having to think about the assignments that they're setting within the morning. I'm now going to hand over to Ben, who is going to talk to you about how it can work practically within your school. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So the way we've got things set up at Danesfield, as Sarah mentioned, we're our primary school. So we've got we use Microsoft Teams. So we're talking about Office 365 use today with our blended learning. So first thing is to ensure that all the students are in their class team, or we've got a year group team set up for each year. So we're a 2 form entry school, so we have all the children in one team for their remote learning. So ensuring that everyone is in that team, and then that all the children obviously know how to log on and how to access that from home. So if it's something you're new to using, then it'll be good time to start practicing that in school, because obviously you never know when children are going to need that additional support at home. So what we've done is, in the class team for each year group, we've created a folder in files called First Day of Home Learning. And within this folder, each year group has put a writing task, a maths task, and a topic task, something for the afternoon. Quite a generic task that the children can just get on with on their first day of home learning without having to have an actual call with the teacher. Because if a parent rings up on a Monday and to say, oh, my child isn't going to be in because they're waiting for a PCR test result or something like that, it's very short notice for the teachers then to be giving them an actual lesson on that day. So it just gives you a bit of time, a bit of space to prepare the next day for their actual teaching session to take place. And it gives them an actual writing task and some math to do that you can still look at and mark based on probably some of the activities you've done so far this year. So we've done that for each of our year groups, and all of our parents have obviously been made aware of this, that's going to be in place for their first day of their home learning. The next thing we do is creating assignments within teams. So we'll always use assignments, and no matter who we've got delivering the actual live teaching to the children, our class teachers are setting those assignments. So we create assignments that will replicate the exact same work that the children would be doing in the classroom, so that they're not going to fall behind. You're not going to create any gaps in their learning. So the teacher will usually have resources they're using in class that then can just be uploaded as an attachment to an assignment. And then, of course, the work can then be marked and given written feedback by whoever's taking care of the online lessons. We've also created a bank of resources for those things that Sarah was talking about, for afternoon lessons, for forest school, for music sessions, for art, and coding, and we've got drumming lessons and things like that. We've got a bank of resources on our intranet, and I've also put a QR code on the screen here for anyone that wishes to make use of it. But we've got 20 forest school sessions, which include a pre-recorded video lesson with a PDF of a lesson plan, and there's also a PowerPoint version of that as well, so that you can go in and edit it yourselves and put your school logo on it if you want to. So feel free to scan that with your phones while I'm speaking, and it will ask you to put your email address into a Microsoft form, and then I can send you the lesson pack with all 20 lessons in there. We've shared it with a lot of schools. It's been very successful, and we're happy to share that. I've also got a document which we're happy to share as well, which is links to lesson ideas for things like music and art and all those sorts of things. Lots of online resources that you could take things from just for those afternoon lessons. So if you'd like those as well, then you can contact us, and I'll be happy to share that document and also those forest school lessons. So give the QR code a scan if you'd be interested in those, and I've got the code at the end as well if you miss it now. So our live lessons. So as Sarah said, you need to run this in a way that is suitable for your school and for the staff setup that you've got. So you need to allocate, well, we allocate a member of staff from each year group to deliver those live lessons. So it might be that you get your class teacher to deliver the input to their class, and then spend 15 minutes after the input has been given to the class, go out and deliver that same input to children who are learning from home. Or it might be that you get a member of support staff, a TA, to go out and deliver that input while the teacher is giving the input in the classroom, whichever works best for you. Like I said, the work that is set is the same work that is going on in the classroom. And if the teacher isn't going to be delivering that lesson personally, and it's going to be a member of staff, then the instructions are written on the assignment for that member of staff, so they can follow them exactly, and then the input can be given in the exact way that the class teacher would like it to be given. And then also, whoever that person is that is delivering those lessons, so sometimes it is a member of support staff here at Danesfield, they would also receive the work that is submitted on the assignments, and they will give written feedback on those assignments as well. So we also have our pastoral support worker who will give the children at home video calls. They'll organise time to speak to them and just check in with them and make sure their sort of well-being is all good. Our Senko will give SEND support to any children that require it if they're not in school. And all of our staff and children are trained on the use of accessibility tools. So they know how to access immersive reader from year one upwards if they require that. And of course, if you're using Teams and Office 365, immersive reader is now built into most applications. So all of our staff and students and parents are shown how to use these tools. So if they are learning from home, they've got access to that. And then they can also get support from our Senko. And the teachers try and include, as Sarah said, try and include the children who are at home in some classroom activities if possible, whether that's story time at the end of the day, just so they have that connection with the children, with their friends. So an example might be, of a lesson might be using Flipgrid. So I know our year 3 teachers today did a hot seating task using Flipgrid. And so the children who have been working from home were still able to access those videos, and they became the characters to answer the questions that the children in class have been answering. So they're still able to see their friends and still participate in a lesson that was taking place in school, and respond using Flipgrid through Teams. So reading progress is a new part of Teams, and it's something that will be really interesting to trial if you haven't trialed it yet while children are learning from home. If you haven't seen it, you can go to create a new assignment in Teams, and when you go to attach something to that assignment, reading progress will come up at the bottom of that list, and there you can upload a Word document or a PDF of any text that you want the children to be reading at home. And the children read to camera. You can choose whether they have to be on camera or not, or it can just be audio if you prefer that. And what happens is they record their reading, and then Teams will automatically pick out mispronunciations, repeated words, and any sort of self-corrections that they're putting into their reading. It's very, very new to Microsoft. It's a big thing that they've released this year, and we're trialing it at the moment at Danesfield, and it seems very interesting so far. There are texts already built into reading progress that you can use if you don't want to upload your own ones, but it gives you an opportunity, gives the teacher an opportunity to still hear their children reading, even if they're not able to do it live in a video call. They can still see them on screen reading and give them feedback on that and find out how they're getting on. So they're still capturing their progress even though they're not in school. So if you haven't tried that, take a look at that. There's some great instructional videos about how to use reading progress on YouTube from Mike Tolfson, who's one of the main Microsoft software developers. So check those out if you haven't seen him yet. And then finally, making the most of your Teams. So if you're using Teams for children who are at home, doing things like creating a website tab. So clicking on that little plus sign at the top of the class team in any channel and adding the applications. So we use website tabs for things like spelling share, times table, rockstars. So things that children are going to access regularly, whether they're in school or whether they're learning at home. It's a good way of doing things to keep the children safe and to know that they're not having to sort of search through the web and type in long URLs to access websites. If you've got them set up on there, you know that they're safe and secure within Teams. They can easily access them at any age. You can also now set up collaboration spaces using the whiteboard app in Teams. So again, you can hit the plus sign to add a tab, which you can add whiteboard into any channel. So if you want to have a channel set up for different subject areas, you can set up a whiteboard within that channel, which then your class can collaborate on. So again, the children at home can work with a group of children who are in school, and they can all work on that whiteboard at the same time if that's something you want them to do, share ideas together. And another tool that we love to use here is Kahoot, where you can set up quizzes, and there are sort of quizzes built into it as well that you can choose. And again, it's something that the children at home can be involved in at the same time as the children in school. So you're keeping the children connected as much as possible, which is really important. So that's how we're running things at Danesfield. That's our approach to blended learning. These are all of our social media handles. You can get us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, pretty much everything. So check those out. And you can get in contact with us about anything we talked about today, and look at any of the other EdTech things that we've been sharing and curriculum ideas on YouTube. Also, I just wanted to mention, I think a lot of you are here today through the EdTech Demonstrator Program, you're already being supported. But if you're not part of the Demonstrator Program, you've come through social media or something like that, and you would like support with your EdTech in your school, then go to the website that's shown on the screen now, and you can apply for free support from a demonstrator school. And I've just got that QR code on there again, just quickly, if anyone missed it earlier and would like to scan that to get the Forest School lessons from Danesfield. We'll have a look at the chat in a minute to see if there's been any questions about that. That's our primary school approach, and I'm going to pass you over to Lee now to talk about Ribblesdale and how things are running there.
Thank you very much, Ben. So first of all, to give you a bit of information about Ribblesdale. Ribblesdale itself is a larger than average school in Lancashire. We're from a town called Clitheroe, and we currently have 1,500 pupils who are actually within our cohort. And at this moment in time, each one of our pupils do have their own one-to-one learning device. So they all have their own Windows 10 device within lesson that they can actually also take home as well. So first of all, to give you our approach, the kind of approach that Ribblesdale wanted to hit at when we were doing blended learning. We've actually evolved over the last 2 years on how we've actually approached this. So what I wanted to do is to give you both approaches, because it would probably depend on where you are within your journey to which approach might best suit yourselves. Okay, so the first thing is we wanted to always ensure the continuality of learning. Okay, so our pupils are getting the same education at home as they would within a physical classroom. And also as well, that was mentioned, previously from Danesfield, the actual well-being of our pupils, our staff, and the whole of that community. So whatever we actually put in place for our pupils and our community, we wanted to make sure that their well-being was at the forefront. Thank you, Ben. So the very first approach that we took was we created something called our virtual school. Okay, and what we did is we had a separate team for each year group within our school. So considering that we have 1,500 pupils, we had separate teams for years 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And 11. And whenever a pupil would go into isolation, we would then put this pupil into that team, and they would be able to access the resources that were sent out. Now, what we needed to make sure is that pupils were communicated and parents were communicated via text message with a list of instructions, exactly what they needed to do and what was expected before they were placed into that team. So if they had to go in isolation, say for example on the Monday, on the Tuesday they could start the working straight away. And what we did is very similar to Danesfield. We started to set all of our work using assignments. Okay, so we had allocated members of staff through all subject curriculum areas across school, and they were given 1 hour a week to actually run this virtual school for their subject area. And then they would set an assignment task, which would actually last the duration of the week. So what would happen is we would set so all teachers would set an assignment, or all virtual school staff would set an assignment that would actually land on the virtual schools on the Monday morning. So at 8 o'clock Monday morning, an assignment would be set. Now, this would actually last the whole duration of the week, but then a due date was input on the Sunday afternoon. Okay, and the reason why that was done is because after the Sunday afternoon, it would then disappear from the assignments tab, so pupils or new pupils entering the virtual school wouldn't see the old assignments. So that was very clear instructions that we needed to do there. So once again, if this is an approach that you wanted to think about, it's making sure that you have things in place to make sure that it keeps it nice, easy, and clear for students who are actually entering this virtual school. Now, the questions that pupils had is when they were actually completing the tasks, is if they needed to ask a question, they would place it into, attach it to the assignment, and they would ask that question to the virtual learning member of staff. Now, the virtual learning member of staff would not pick this up until their allocated time throughout the week. So this might have been for example, they might have started the work on a Monday, but our staff member might not have had the time to approach that question until the Wednesday. So that is something to also consider there on our approach there. And the other thing with this approach is that all of our tasks that we had and we set were all skills-based tasks. So they weren't generally exactly what we were doing within the lesson, but they were focused more around the skills that you would need for those subject areas. And the reason for that, let's say, for example, if we had English, okay, we might have 11 different lessons going on in English, where all teachers are on slightly different area of that curriculum. So by making sure that we were focusing on that skills-based task, we could make sure that they were developing the skills that they would need for when they come back into the school. Thank you, Ben. Now, to give you a couple of things, so as I mentioned, we evolved. This was our very first method that we used. Now, the reason why we did this is because we wanted to make sure that we were able to have the right approach, that staff were feeling comfortable and confident to actually teach the pupils that were in their class first of all. Okay, so that's what we needed to make sure. After that, we then started to have a little look at how we could evolve this approach. So a couple of things that we found about this, and this is obviously something to consider if this is what you would like to do. On a Monday morning, you get a large amount of notifications through the virtual team. So I think on a Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and was the reason why we set it at 8 o'clock, was due to the fact that we would then get 50, 60 notifications all hit our Teams platform at exactly the same time. The reason why we chose that time is so at 8:30 or whenever other important messages were coming to us through the platform, it wouldn't be lost with all of the noise. Okay, so that was something that we considered there. It was very time consuming for administration purposes, adding people to the virtual schools, removing them from the virtual schools, and making sure that everything was up to date was actually quite time consuming for administrative purposes, as we had a virtual school member of staff who actually ran that, and then on top of that we had a member of staff in each subject area that also looked after the actual admin side there. Also, the learning content was obviously different than it would be within the physical room. So if subject specific knowledge content was needed, that might have been missed at that stage. And one thing that we weren't quite happy about with this approach was that kind of response time. Questions, weren't response time to questions weren't instant. It could often take 2-3 days to answer that question, which we know to a pupil who's accessing that work at that time probably isn't the best approach. Okay, and then what we needed to ensure is basically ensuring that work was completed by our classroom staff was often quite difficult to do, because it was 11 teachers, so there was one member of staff who was then trying to distribute this to all of the curriculum areas leaders, and all of them that was then being filtered down into subject specific teachers, and it was actually quite time consuming and quite challenging to do, to be perfectly honest. And I've got some screenshots there to have a little look at. Like we had to use the not turned in function on Teams, because students would often look at the task, but they would often forget to press the turned in button, so then that wouldn't identify that to members of staff. So it was quite a challenging way, but I certainly think that when we started that approach, it was the right approach for us because of where we were. Now we have evolved, and what we've had a little look at over the last 2 years, and if Ben clicks on, I will show you what we are actually doing now. Okay, so during that time, our members of staff were getting very much more comfortable with delivering live lessons on Microsoft Teams, but also teaching pupils within the classroom. So in actual fact, now at Ribblesdale High School, we have a hybrid lesson approach. So basically, what happens is that teachers will actually teach pupils in the physical classroom, as well as pupils actually being at home at the same time. Okay, so what will happen is all teachers will set up a reoccurring lesson, okay, that is actually scheduled every single week and has actually been done since the start of the year. So at the very start, when we had an inset day, one of the tasks that all of our teachers needed to do is to set a reoccurring lesson up for all of their lessons throughout the whole of the year. And that was there just in case. Okay, and what happens is at the start of the lesson, the pupil is expected to start that meeting, or the member of staff will start that meeting. Okay, so as the start of the lesson starts, we will start that live lesson. Any pupil who is isolating and well enough to work at home will join that live lesson, and the teacher will take the register as normal. So the only difference is we now also have pupils connecting wirelessly remotely to our lesson while working from home, as well as us as teachers teaching the pupils in our physical classroom using the same PowerPoints and the same resources as we would do. The register is then taken, and we can then sorry Ben, if you could just nip back please. Okay, the register is then taken. Okay, and what we have, and I'm sure it's probably the same in a lot of secondary schools, is we have an X that signifies that pupils are currently isolating at home. So on our statutory registers, okay, which is the morning and the afternoon, they will always stay as X, okay. But if for the other lessons throughout the day, if the pupils do enter that enter the lesson, we mark them as present. Now, what we will do is we will have a 10-15 minute kind of introduction of that lesson. Okay, so we will teach the students live. Okay, and then after that 10 to 15 minutes, the pupil can then leave that live lesson call. And as they leave that live lesson call, they can then complete that work independently without the noise of the classroom or vice versa. Okay. And then the teacher or the pupil themselves can ask any questions that they would like on their on the features and the chat that Teams actually offers as well. Okay. And it's all about pupils accessing their normal timetable. Now, if this is an approach that you are thinking about, it is extremely important, first of all, to get your meeting options correct. Okay, so we always set it so it's only me. I've got an image there on the screen, so it's only ourselves and the teachers that can bypass that lobby. And pupils in our school are allowed their mics on, but also their cameras on if we need them to ask those cameras on. But that camera will only be turned on if the teacher asks them to turn that camera on. Next slide, please, Ben. So what are the advantages that this approach has offered us? Well, first of all, we were very concerned about the extra workload that this would be putting onto teachers, but it's actually saved teachers an awful lot of time as there's so much more less preparation. Pupils are all accessing the same learning content, so you can have pupils at home and in school accessing exactly the same lesson. The teacher is able to support in real time and is able to give very quick assessments on engagement levels as well. An awful lot more less admin support because the teacher's doing that within a normal lesson as well. And also, as mentioned as well, it promotes the well-being for pupils massively because pupils are still engaging with their classmates. They're still getting involved in PowerPoints, that they can use those share functions. And as a school, this has actually benefited us much, much better to have our pupils engaging within that lesson if they are working remotely. Thank you, Ben. And I believe that is the end of kind of explaining ourselves there on how we've changed the way that we do our blended learning approach at Ribblesdale High School.
Thanks, Lee. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I haven't seen any come up in the chat, which I'm hoping is a good thing. I think the sort of the main key things that have come out, I think, of both of our approaches there are the continuation of the work that the children are learning in school, that continues whilst they're at home. I think there were so many during lockdown. I think there were so many students that fell behind and created sort of significant gaps in their learning, that this is a sort of an opportunity to try and avoid that again. as much as possible. And I think the connection between the students as well is one of the most important things too.
I think as well, it's also to look at, as a school, your own resources and what your advantages are as a school and what you actually have, and using what you do well already to support those learners when they are working remotely. I think that's something to obviously consider. But and I know this has been mentioned, but to continually review kind of what provision we're putting in place to see how we can make that more impactful for our pupils as we move forward, as the reason why us as Ribblesdale High School also decided to change, as we felt like we weren't offering our isolating pupils the best education that they could get at that time.
Yeah, I think going back to from what Sarah said at the beginning as well, the balance for teachers as well is so important, that you're not putting too much in terms of leadership, not putting too much pressure on your teachers and burning them out. So finding the way that works best for your school, that's not going to cause additional work for your staff. Richard Pym has asked a question. Lee, have you seen that?
I have, yes. Okay, so what we would use, Richard, we within our school, we use the Windows Ink Workspace button for a lot of our whiteboards. And because our whiteboards are generally, once again, also digitally on our computers, it means that we can also share our notes or our whiteboard that we actually have for our classes as well. Unfortunately, if a teacher does decide to write on a physical whiteboard, that is something that at this moment in time we don't share. But we, thinking how we could do that, you could do it from a photo. We do have the computers in front of us. We could take that photo and share it with those isolating pupils. But in terms, we would generally use the options like Windows Ink Workspace, or, for example, a Microsoft Whiteboard app as well to show those quick notes that we often need to take. Yes, you would be able to see a digital whiteboard. If I share, for example, if I choose to share my desktop rather than my PowerPoint, you will see everything that my desktop sees. Okay, and I don't know whether to do a quick, if I just take over, Ben, just to quickly show how we might do it. So if I just share very quickly, I'm currently sharing my desktop. And if I use this button here, which is my Ink Workspace, I can press the whiteboard option, and it's jumped onto a different one of my screens, so bear with me. Okay, and as you can see, I can clear my canvas. Okay, and I can write on my whiteboard as normal. So I can, for example, as a computer science teacher, we use this quite a lot to teach the likes of binary or things like that. But this is a tool that we would use to share our whiteboard, and then we can save that and then send that to our pupils to show them, or so they have a representation of what was happening there.
And you can actually use Whiteboard as an application in a Teams meeting as well, that then the children who are on the meeting you can give them the ability to write on that whiteboard as well, so they could actually be part of the lesson too if they use that. And you can set that whiteboard up before the lesson even starts. So if you wanted to put resources on there that they're going to see from the off, then you could have that on there ready for them to go on, and you can switch between them being able to edit it and for it just be the teacher to have access to that.
You don't need a graphics tablet. It certainly does help if you do have one, but you can use your mouse as well to write. It can be quite difficult.
You can type text on whiteboard as well, though, can't you? You can add post-it notes, and you can actually just type on there as well. So if your mouse skills aren't up to the test, then you can just type as well.
Okay.
If anyone does have any more questions or would like to get in touch with us, then please do. you can get us through, like I showed, our social media. I'm sure Lee won't mind you getting in touch with Ribblesdale if you want to speak to him. And if you're not getting support through from a demonstrator school, then please go onto the website and apply for that if you'd like some EdTech support. Thank you very much for joining us. I've recorded the session, so if you want to share that with your staff within your school, then I'll send it out to everyone who has registered today. And thanks again for joining, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.
Thank you now.